No one expected Jasmine Crockett to go there, especially not live, with millions watching, but in a quiet, half-empty chamber near midnight, she did. With calm precision, she called out the performance surrounding Melania Trump's marriage. And the moment those words hit the air, everything changed. Within hours. Donald Trump was yelling at aides, threatening censure, demanding silence. But it was already too late, because Crockett didn't just make a comment, she struck a nerve the whole country had been tiptoeing around. The room that night buzzed faintly, papers shuffled, quiet conversations hummed. Most Americans were asleep. But somewhere in Texas, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett was wide awake, measured, alert, and ready. She hadn't planned to speak again. But when Representative Douglas Pratt from Nebraska laughed and cut her off, brushing her aside like some mouthy intern, something shifted. She sat still for a beat. Then her mic clicked on. "I'm not done," she said. Her voice was calm. Unshaken, Pratt tried to object. She didn't flinch. "You want to talk about family values?" she asked, turning slightly toward the chairman. "You want to lecture this country about loyalty and strong marriages?" Eyes lifted from phones. Someone leaned forward. "Then let's talk about the silence we keep seeing at the very top." She paused, just long enough to let the words settle. "When's the last time we saw the First Lady smile next to the President, without a camera forcing it?" The room cracked. "You want America to believe in a picture-perfect marriage." She continued, "But the First Lady's ring hasn't seen sunlight in weeks, and everybody knows it." Gasps. A few smirks. Someone in the back coughed, half covering a laugh. Chairman Weldon hesitated with his gavel, unsure whether to end it or let her speak. Crockett didn't yell. She didn't dramatize. She delivered. "You can't weaponize your wife's image," she added, "and then act shocked when someone calls it what it is, a performance. And a bad one." Weldon tapped the gavel, softly. "That's enough, Congresswoman." But everyone knew it wasn't. The aides behind her exchanged glances. The stenographer hesitated, then kept typing and no one had seen it coming. "Not like that, Trump's." Allies stayed quiet, visibly shaken. Just the sound of rustling papers, shifting seats, and a truth that hung too heavy to ignore. C-SPAN caught every second. The clip was less than 2 minutes long, but it didn't spread. It detonated within 15 minutes, it was trending. By 2 a.m., Melania missing was climbing the charts. Some were outraged. "Dragging the First Lady into politics is disgusting," one post read. But others, especially women, heard something else. They heard the crack in a polished surface. That had never quite felt real. It wasn't really about Melania. It was about silence. Power. Visibility. How even women in the White House can disappear in plain sight. Jasmine never said that outright. She didn't need to. By sunrise, the White House issued a clenched-teeth statement condemning inappropriate personal attacks. But the words were already loose in the world, and doing their work, because sometimes, it only takes one sentence to break an image wide open. By mid-morning, Jasmine Crockett's face was everywhere, not smiling, not shouting, just steady behind a congressional mic. Her tone so even, it chilled the room. The internet isn't built for subtlety. But this moment made people lean in. Major political accounts reposted it with captions like, "She said what we've all been thinking." It hit 100,000 likes in under 2 hours. On TikTok, creators stitched reactions beside her clip. A waitress in Michigan watched it on break and whispered, "Damn. She didn't lie." A therapist in Ohio broke down the meaning of public dissociation. How some women live in gold cages no one sees. The moment went beyond social media. Morning shows called her bold, divisive, unapologetic. Late-night shows wanted her. Podcasts called. MSNBC labeled it radical honesty. Fox News played the clip next to old footage of Melania, silent at Trump's side. One post stood out, a side-by-side image, Melania looking away from Trump. At the 2020 debates beside a screenshot of Crockett speaking, the caption, "Women know." And they did, because this wasn't just about Melania. It was about every woman who ever smiled when she didn't want to. Who stood beside a man because it was expected, not because it was safe. Who stayed silent to stay intact. In Portland, A college student hosted a 3-hour live stream on public image and marriages. In Phoenix, a former campaign intern recalled seeing Melania sit alone through an entire fundraiser in 2019, like she was just waiting for it to end. Some scoffed. You don't know their marriage. It's not your business. But it wasn't just a marriage anymore. It was a symbol, and symbols don't get privacy. Donations to Crockett's campaign tripled overnight. One woman said, she said something that wasn't safe. That means something. But backlash brewed. Trump loyalists lit up message boards, demanding Crockett's censure. A man in Alabama filmed himself burning her campaign poster, muttering, "She doesn't know her place." A conservative radio host called her a disgrace to Congress. But with every attack, her voice grew louder, and behind the scenes, Jasmine Crockett stayed calm. When you speak the truth, expect people to flinch. No mention of Trump. No follow-up about Melania. She didn't need to, because by then, the conversation had already taken on a life of its own. The timeline flooded with takes, think pieces, and video essays. Even some conservative voters began chiming in quietly, anonymously, with cracks in the wall. I voted for Trump twice, but she's right. Melania hasn't looked happy in years. It was as if someone had flipped on a light in a room everyone had been pretending was dark. For many, Jasmine Crockett wasn't just bold, she was right. But while the internet debated, inside the West Wing, Trump was unraveling. By 8 a.m., the White House was in full panic mode. Phones rang non-stop. Aides whispered in corridors. 2 interns were assigned to monitor every trending keyword attached to Crockett's name, because this wasn't just a soundbite anymore. It was a movement, and Trump despised movements he didn't control. He was already pacing in the private dining room off the Oval Office, red-faced, steam rising from his skin. His chief of staff, Brian Kessler, stood nearby, hands behind his back, eyes fixed forward. She called my wife a prisoner, Trump snapped, slamming down a half-eaten breakfast sandwich. You don't let that happen. You hit back. She didn't say prisoner, sir, Kessler replied, cautiously. She asked a question. That's different. She said my wife doesn't wear her ring. Trump barked, slamming his palm on the table. Who the hell does she think she is? Kessler opened his mouth, then shut it. He knew better. Trump wasn't asking for reason. He was demanding vengeance. Draft a response, Trump growled. Call her unhinged. Call her trash. I don't care. Make it go away. But it was already too late for that. By the time the comms team arrived, the narrative had slipped far beyond their grasp. One staffer, fresh out of grad school, suggested releasing new photos of the first couple smiling together. The idea died mid-sentence. She's not doing that, Kessler said flatly. What do you mean? Another aide asked. She's not doing photos. She's not speaking. She's not responding. The silence hit the room like a brick. Melania had declined everything. No statement. No tweet. Not even a carefully crafted appearance. That morning, Trump had stormed into the East Wing unannounced. Melania's assistant tried to intercept him. He waved her off. She needs to come out with me. Just stand next to me and smile. 2 minutes. That's it. The door stayed closed. Minutes later, a short text arrived from her team. The first lady is not available at this time. That was all. Trump stormed back to the West Wing, fuming about loyalty, betrayal, and how some congresswoman thinks she can take down a marriage with one sentence. But it wasn't about a sentence anymore. The fracture had already spread. Staffers whispered about how rarely Melania had been seen in recent weeks. She used to stop by the Rose Garden, offer a wave in the press corridor. Now, nothing. An older aide, who had served under multiple administrations, said quietly, this feels different, like she's already gone. Kessler and the legal team scrambled to draft a complaint to the House Ethics Committee, accusing Crockett of personal and targeted character attacks. Even their own legal advisors weren't sold. Too vague, one said. Reads like a tantrum. Trump didn't care. He signed it with a thick black Sharpie and ordered Kessler to leak it. Make it sound like she's being punished. Let people run with that. But this time, it didn't land. Every time Trump lashed out, Crockett looked calmer, more grounded. Every insult made her seem more principled, and worst of all, Melania still wouldn't play along. That afternoon, a blurry photo surfaced online, Melania, alone, exiting a side door in sunglasses. No staff. No ring. It was snapped by a delivery driver and posted to Reddit. The caption read, "She's not even pretending anymore." Inside the West Wing, Trump slammed a door so hard a portrait shifted off-center. He called Ivanka 3 times. No answer. The unraveling wasn't just public, it was internal. And Jasmine? She hadn't said another word. No interviews. No fiery posts. Just one image on her Instagram story, black background. White text. Truth doesn't need to yell. And that silence was deafening. Then the question came, first as a whisper, is she okay? But over the next 48 hours, it snowballed into something else entirely, not just a question, but a reckoning. Comment sections filled up. Videos went viral. Even people who had never supported Crockett paused and asked, wait, when's the last time we actually saw Melania? The answer was startling. Her last public appearance had been 6 weeks earlier, at a children's event. She hadn't spoken. Just stood stiffly, 2 feet away from Trump, smiling for the camera. No holiday statements. No press releases. Not even her usual spring flower post. Clips resurfaced. Footage from the Easter egg roll. Trump tried to touch her back. She subtly shifted away. A state dinner, she walked 10 steps ahead, didn't look back once. Body language. Experts chimed in. Some takes were overblown. Others hit hard. She's communicating with silence, said one profiler. That's how women survive power, they go quiet, but not small. Then came the former staffers. Point 3. All anonymous. Each echoing the same sentiment, she's not part of the equation anymore. She lives her own schedule. Honestly, I think she's checked out. That last phrase caught fire. Checked out. Talk shows picked it up. Google searches exploded. Opinion pieces were rushed to publication. Has Melania Trump checked out of the White House? What started as one sentence, spoken in a quiet congressional chamber, had become something else entirely. It was no longer about Jasmine Crockett. It was about the story we've been sold. And the silence that finally cracked it open. Before the moment faded, one clip from The View went viral. A host leaned back in her chair and said, I don't even think it's about Jasmine anymore. She just cracked the glass. We're finally seeing something we weren't supposed to notice. By then, #IsMelaniaOK wasn't just trending, it had become cultural currency. Even brands were trying to capitalize. A skincare company posted a meme, she might not be okay, but her moisturizer's working overtime. The backlash was immediate, but the post stayed up. High school debate teams began using the moment as a case study. The question had evolved into a national prompt. Still, no word from the First Lady. Her official accounts went dark. No denial. No subtle support for Trump. Not even a passive-aggressive subtweet. Just silence. And that silence only made everything louder. People started emailing reporters with alleged sightings at a bookstore in McLean, a cafe in Langley, a spa in Georgetown. None confirmed. But each added to the growing myth inside the West Wing. Staffers tried to pivot, announcing new education initiatives, touting an agriculture program in Iowa. But no one cared. They didn't want policy. They wanted Melania, and that was Trump's real problem. Every headline about her was now, indirectly, about him. The longer she stayed silent, the louder the conversation grew. And the louder it got, the more she became a symbol of something trapped, of something tired, of something done pretending. And Crockett had sparked the match. But it was Melania's silence that fanned the flame. In Philadelphia, a group of women held a silent rally outside Independence Hall. Signs read, "You don't have to smile. You can leave. Silence is a sentence too." Hundreds showed up. No speeches. Just presence. Even those who usually tuned politics out felt it. Because this was never just about a marriage. Or a presidency. It was about performance. And what it costs to keep pretending in public. Still, as sympathy for Melania grew, Crockett's flame burned steady. She didn't flinch. While headlines swirled and social media spun wild theories, Crockett got up, showered, pulled on a black blazer, and walked into the AM Viewpoint studio like it was any other Tuesday. The producer whispered, 7 minutes live. They're going to ask about it. She just nodded. Across from her sat Shay Randall, sharp, seasoned, and famously blunt. Congresswoman, Shay began, not even waiting for the live feed to settle. People are calling your remarks personal, inappropriate, even dangerous. What do you say to that? Crockett didn't blink. I said what I saw, she replied. And a lot of people saw it too. They just didn't say it out loud. Shay leaned in. Are you accusing the First Lady of being trapped? Crockett exhaled, just once. Not quite a laugh, not quite a sigh. A signal. She saw through the game. I'm not accusing anyone of anything, she said. I'm pointing out what women across this country have whispered for years, the performance of happiness. The expectation to smile, stand still, and look good next to men who disrespect us. It wasn't about Melania anymore. And everyone watching knew it. Then she added, you want to know what's dangerous? Telling women to be quiet so powerful men don't feel embarrassed. That's dangerous. That clip hit 2.4 million views. In 8 hours. BY evening, she was trending again, not for a jab, but for something far more rare. Conviction. In Milwaukee, a single mother named Anika recorded herself watching the clip on her laptop. She turned the camera around and said, I'm not a political person. But this woman right here? She just told the truth we're not supposed to say. Support poured in from educators, activists, even quietly, from Republican women. Not loudly. Not publicly. But it came, and while political figures scrambled to create distance, Crockett's team could barely keep up with the small dollar donations flooding in. $5. $10. $20. One note read, for every woman who smiled through it. But not everyone was cheering. A group of House Republicans held a stiff press conference in a beige committee room. One congressman from Idaho declared, we don't bring people's families into politics. That's beneath this institution. Crockett replied with a short video from her home office. No makeup. A sweatshirt. Laptop camera tilted slightly. You brought families into politics, she said, when you paraded them for photo ops. When you hid behind them to push policies that hurt the rest of us. So no. I won't apologize. I don't owe decorum to people who protect lies. It wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't slick. It was honest, and it landed. Her Instagram comments filled with raw stories, women recalling fake smiles at PTA meetings. Pretending everything was fine at church. Lying through their teeth when someone asked, are you okay, at home? Crockett hadn't just revealed something political. She had cracked something personal, that made it powerful. That week, she was invited to Real Talk, State Line Weekly, and 3 major university panels. She said yes to all. But her message stayed tight. No speculation about Melania. No gloating. No backtracking. She brought it back to one point. We silence women in quiet ways, through pressure, expectation, image. And we call it respectability. But respectability never saved anybody. Her voice wasn't angry. It wasn't bitter. It was steady. And that steadiness made people nervous. The more she spoke, the more powerful her voice became. And the harder. Trump tried to shut her down. The first strike came quietly. A conservative blog in Pensacola published a vague post claiming Jasmine Crockett had once attended a radical university event. No photos. No quotes. No context, just a headline and insinuation. At first, it barely made a ripple, but by Thursday afternoon, it was echoing across right-wing Twitter. A media watchdog account tweeted, why isn't anyone talking about Jasmine? Crockett's past? Within hours, 3 conservative networks ran with it. By nightfall, the same article had been copy-pasted onto 15 other fringe outlets. Accuracy wasn't the goal. The goal was damage, but Crockett wasn't playing defense. She wasn't running. And she wasn't backing down. It was a distraction. They didn't care what Jasmine actually said. They wanted noise. Static. Anything to push her words out of people's heads, but it didn't stop there. By Friday morning, a slick, 90-second video began circulating on Facebook. Cropped clips of Jasmine raising her voice during past hearings, spliced between slow-motion footage of burning flags and a deep male voice warning of radical disruptors in Congress. It ended with a flashing phrase, "She's not here to lead. She's here to divide." It reeked of super PAC production. Dark money. Focus-tested fear. Jasmine saw it for what it was, cheap and lazy. She forwarded it to her comms director with a one-line note, "Let them spend their money. We'll keep telling the truth." But she didn't underestimate it. She knew the playbook. She'd been in politics long enough to know what came next. That night, her campaign office in Dallas got over 100 phone calls. Half were slurs or threats. One volunteer, a high school senior named Leighton, answered 5 in a row. Men yelling. Breathing heavily. Then hanging up. By Saturday, it escalated. A truck circled her neighborhood blaring audio from the smear ad. Neighbors called the police. The driver claimed protected speech. And still, Jasmine didn't back down. At a Sunday town hall in Fort Worth, she stood in front of a packed gymnasium and said, "They're not afraid because I lied. They're afraid because I told the truth." The crowd erupted. But behind the scenes, her team was stretched thin, fending off reporters, handling security, pushing back on shady local outlets claiming Jasmine had gone too far. One of the louder attacks came from a former congressional aide turned podcast host. He accused Jasmine of being obsessed with the First Lady, projecting her own failed relationships onto Melania. This man, who built his entire platform on misogyny dressed up as commentary, repeated the same line over and over, "This is why women shouldn't play politics with feelings." But every attack made her base dig in deeper. One clip from Fort Worth went viral after a popular influencer shared it to 3 million followers. It showed Jasmine saying, "Let's be real. They wouldn't be this loud if I had stayed quiet." The comment section exploded, "She's saying what we're thinking. I've been told to shut up my whole life, not anymore." In the middle of that storm, Jasmine sat across from her mother at a quiet diner in Garland. They split pancakes and eggs. 2 men at the next table whispered and pointed. Jasmine didn't look over. Her mom reached across the table and took her hand. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I'm tired," Jasmine said. "But I'm not wrong." That was enough, for now. Back at her office, her press team pushed back on 3 new smear pieces, 2 fake stories from her law school days. One photo of her at a drag brunch spun into something sinister. They were busy, but not overwhelmed. Because this wasn't new. The machine had tried to swallow women like Jasmine before. It just wasn't working like it used to, and she wasn't alone anymore. It started with one quiet congresswoman from Arizona. Not flashy. Not viral. But during a routine education hearing, she paused, looked directly into the camera, and said, "I may not agree with everything Jasmine Crockett says. But she's right about one thing, we've all been told to smile and stand still. I'm done with that." Silence. No interruptions. No objections. By the end of the day, 3 more women in Congress echoed her. One from Oregon. One from Pennsylvania. One from Kansas, who hadn't even planned to speak that day. They weren't quoting Jasmine word for word. They didn't have to, they were naming something no one used to name. One representative shared that she'd been coached to wear soft colors and avoid criticizing male colleagues too directly. Another revealed that during her first campaign, her own advisor told her, "Don't mention the divorce. Voters like a wholesome family image." Same script. And now, they were tearing it up. Outside Capitol Hill, the ripple spread wider. A former First Lady, not Melania, posted a quiet message to her official page. Sometimes silence isn't a choice. It's survival. No tags. No mentions. She didn't need them. The words were shared across every major platform within minutes. Diane Dallas, a retired judge, gave a local interview. She spoke about her decades on the bench, and how even there, in a black robe with a gavel in her hand, she was told not to seem too emotional. She ended the segment with a tired but knowing smile. I guess Jasmine gave us all permission to stop pretending. Then came the letters. Thousands of them, emails, handwritten notes, social media messages. From teachers. From nurses. From factory workers. From stay-at-home moms, stories about long silences in kitchens. Fake smiles in boardrooms. Weddings where the ring never felt right. Or lasted too long. That a woman from St. Paul wrote, "You gave words to something I never thought I could say without being called crazy. Or bitter. Thank you." And just like that, it wasn't about Congress anymore. It wasn't about Melania. It was about women, their voices. Their absences. Their instincts gaslit into quiet. The movement swelled across campuses. Sociology professors rewrote their lectures. Journalism students dug through coverage of political wives. They asked questions like, why do we only notice the wives when they stop smiling? No one had a good answer. Online, a new hashtag emerged, hashtag seen and silent, not angry. Not loud. Just or real. People posted photos of themselves, moments when they were seen but not heard. Wedding toasts. Job interviews. Family dinners. Where the smile didn't match the eyes. It wasn't noise. It was memory. Then, the most unexpected voice joined in. A former TV host, one known for always playing it safe, broke her silence during a podcast. I was married to a man who looked good on paper, she said, but empty in person. She paused. I didn't smile in public because I was happy. I smiled because I was afraid of what would happen if I didn't. She swallowed hard. So when Jasmine asked about Melania's ring, I felt it. You could feel it shift when the men started speaking up, not to center themselves, not to take over, but to admit what they'd seen and ignored. I used to think my sister was just being dramatic, one man wrote beneath Jasmine Crockett's post. Now I think I owe her a call. This wasn't about polling anymore. It wasn't waiting for permission. It was momentum, and it moved like wildfire. And Jasmine? She didn't waver. When asked if she was surprised by the wave she had created, she answered plainly, I didn't create it. I just lit the match. The fire was already there. But one woman remained silent through it all. Melania Trump for weeks. No statement, no denial, no deflection. Not even a line from a spokesperson, just silence. And somehow, that silence made more noise than anything else, when a CNN reporter shouted a question as Melania walked by in a corridor, Mrs. Trump. Do you have a response to Congresswoman Crockett? She didn't flinch. Didn't turn. Didn't speak, just kept walking in a pale beige coat, eyes hidden behind oversized sunglasses. That 6-second clip went viral. For 2 straight days, it dominated headlines. People analyzed her posture. Her expression, the set of her mouth. Experts were brought on air to decode her body language like it was Morse code. It was absurd, but something under the surface had shifted. People were reading between lines that had never been spoken aloud, and then came the photo. It wasn't official. It wasn't planned. It wasn't even certain that it was taken by Teresa Hall, a regular woman out shopping at Tyson's Galleria in McLean, Virginia. She was sipping coffee on a bench when she noticed someone walk by, someone who looked a lot like the First Lady. She snapped a quick photo and posted it on Facebook. I think this is Melania. No Secret Service in sight. No ring. The photo exploded. Melania, if it was her, was alone. Wearing flats and a navy cardigan. Sunglasses perched on her head, hair pulled back. But what caught everyone's attention, her left hand was bared and no ring. No trace of the famous 25-carat diamond that once lit up flashbulbs from across the room, and no one confirmed it. No one denied it. But it didn't matter, people believed it, and belief, in a moment like this, was everything. The image became a symbol. Art students sketched it. Activists printed it on t-shirts. Feminist blogs ran headlines like, "The Ring That Vanished," and "What It Means." The symbolism outgrew the reality, but still, Melania said nothing. The White House refused comment. The press secretary dodged the question, murmuring something about family matters. Inside the West Wing, Trump was unraveling. Staffers said he was more erratic than usual. One day, he refused a call from the Secretary of State, insisting he was dealing with a domestic matter. Another morning, he stormed out of a strategy meeting after someone said Jasmine Crockett's name. He wanted control back. But control required cooperation, and Melania wasn't playing along. Ivanka reportedly reached out 3 times, urging her stepmother to release a simple photo, her and Trump, standing side by side, smiling. No caption. No context, just an image, something. To settle the narrative, Melania didn't respond. An anonymous staffer told a journalist off the record, he can't make her do anything anymore. Not pictures. Not dinners. Not even one smile. In one tense staff meeting, Trump muttered under his breath, "She's doing this on purpose." No one replied. The silence was starting to haunt him. Public speculation spiraled. Had they argued? Was she living elsewhere? Was this all just a contract? At this point, it didn't matter if the answers were yes, no, or maybe. The real power came from the not knowing. From Melania's refusal to perform, women everywhere noticed, because they'd been told before, smile through it. Hold his hand. Post the photo. Sit through the dinner. Don't let anyone ask questions. Melania didn't do any of it. And that was loud. Even comedians started slipping it into their sets. She's the quietest first lady in history, but somehow, she said more than any of them. All it took was no ring, and a walk past a reporter, and Jasmine? She stayed. Quiet on it. At a roundtable in Miami, when someone pressed her, she simply smiled and said it was never about the first lady. It was about what we all pretend not to see. That line echoed, printed in newspapers. Posted on social media. Pasted onto posters at a women's march in Sacramento. The silence hadn't lifted. But somehow, it had grown, and inside the White House, something was shifting. 2 weeks after Jasmine's original remarks, the administration hosted a Veterans Recognition ceremony in Tampa. It was meant to be a reset, patriotism, tradition, leadership. Trump walked on stage in his signature red tie, speech in hand, flanked by security, but one thing was missing. Melania. Her name was on the official program. Her seat was reserved next to his on stage. But when he stepped up to the podium, that chair stayed empty. Trump gave a single sentence, "Melania sends her regards." No smile. No explanation. Just, moved on. The press caught on instantly. Photos of the empty seat exploded across every outlet. Where is Melania? Is she refusing public appearances? Has she left D.C. entirely? White House officials gave the usual bland lines, scheduling conflicts, family matters, but no one was buying it. That night, a blurry, silent video leaked online and no audio. Just a glimpse of Melania walking down a hallway, holding a tablet, lips pursed and thought that no timestamp. No context, but the caption said everything. She's still here, just not beside him. That became the headline no one could shake. It felt bigger than gossip. It felt like truth. Meanwhile, Jasmine was back in D.C., prepping for a subcommittee hearing on media accountability. "You're trending again," her aide said, holding up a phone. Jasmine glanced at it. Her latest quote was everywhere. When women disappear from a narrative, it's usually not by choice. She hadn't planned to say it. It came out naturally during a podcast, like something her mind had been holding for weeks. When asked if she felt responsible for the firestorm, Jasmine didn't hesitate. "I didn't create the fire. I just stopped pretending I didn't smell smoke." That line hit hard. Harder than anyone expected. The invitations poured in. Panels. Editorials. Lectures, but Jasmine stayed focused on no victory laps. No speculation. No backtracking, just the work. She had a job to do to AT the hearing. Jasmine Crockett opened her notes, cleared her throat, and looked directly at the panel. We are held hostage by perception, she began. Not just in politics, in media, in marriages, in public life. We reward the image of composure more than the presence of courage. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. We're told strong women are threats. That silence is safer. But when we stay quiet, nothing changes. And when we speak, they call us dangerous. Behind her, Congresswoman Lena Brewster slowly nodded. She had stayed quiet through the earlier storm. But now, hands clasped, she leaned forward, like she was ready to speak next, after the hearing. Jasmine stepped into the hall and was immediately met by a cluster of reporters. Point one asked, "Do you think the First Lady should speak out?" Jasmine paused, looked directly into the camera, and said she doesn't owe us anything. But she also doesn't owe anyone her silence. The clip was under 10 seconds, but it landed like a strike that night. A new hashtag trended, not in defense of Jasmine, and not even about Melania specifically. It was something larger. A call for autonomy. The right to be visible, or invisible, on your own terms. But inside the White House, tension was boiling. An aide said Trump was snapping at everyone, demanding answers. "What's her game?" he barked. At one point, he even suggested removing Melania from the holiday gala altogether. If she's going to be a ghost, she doesn't need a spotlight. But Melania wasn't being a ghost, she was simply stepping off the stage. And for the first time, it didn't look like defiance. It looked like strength. This was no longer just about a marriage. It had become something else. By the third week, the conversation had shifted entirely. It wasn't about scandal anymore. Not even about Melania, not directly. What began as a sharp remark during a late-night hearing had become something raw, collective, and loud. A reckoning disguised as a question, and Crockett hadn't mentioned the First Lady in weeks. And yet, her silence echoed louder than the spin in Denver. Jasmine took the stage at a grassroots leadership summit. No campaign signs. No fundraiser. Just her and a mic. She wore plain black slacks. No bold makeup. Hair pulled back. The crowd stood before she said a word, not because she was viral. Not because she took someone down, but because she held the line. Because she said something, and didn't fold. "I never meant to start a fire," she told them gently. "I just stopped pretending I didn't see the smoke." The room exhaled. That line had become something of a mantra. This country, she continued, has built entire systems around pretending, around performance. Around smiling when you want to scream. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. I said one sentence about a woman's ring, and the whole country saw through it. Because it wasn't about jewelry. It wasn't even about her. It was about us. Heads nodded. A woman in the front row wiped her eyes with a napkin. "You know what scared them?" Jasmine asked. "Not what I said. But that people listened." She paused, because the moment people start listening, you can't control them anymore. That speech didn't trend like a meme. It didn't go viral for shock value. It lingered. It was replayed on news segments. Quoted in editorials. Taught in classrooms. In Sacramento, a high school posted her words on the hallway bulletin board. "You don't owe anyone your silence. Not your boss. Not your family. Not your country." Meanwhile, the White House remained tight-lipped. No new appearances from Melania. No updates. No staged photos, just absence. And yet, no chaos. Just quiet resistance. That Melania's absence had become part of the story. To Jasmine's refusal to apologize became the other half, and what had started as commentary evolved into a movement. In Chicago, a sold-out panel titled "The Cost of Pretending" featured clergy, therapists, and corporate leaders, all reflecting on how much we sacrifice to maintain the illusion of a fine. In Boston, a playwright announced a one-woman show, the chair beside him Inspired by the empty seat Melania left in Tampa in Arizona, a public university announced a scholarship in Jasmine's name, awarded annually to a student who demonstrated courageous public integrity. Jasmine was surprised she never set out to become anyone's icon. She was just telling the truth as she saw it. But when you speak the truth out loud, people remembered. In a later interview, when asked again about the fallout, she smiled softly and shrugged. Sometimes you say something, and it dies in the room. And sometimes it echoes. She leaned forward, this one echoed. By month's end, support for Crockett had grown beyond her district. She wasn't a trending moment anymore. She was a voice, not because she yelled, but because she never backed away. And across the country, something subtle had shifted. People were asking new kinds of questions. Why are women expected to protect men's reputations at the cost of their own sanity? Why is silence mistaken for grace? Why do we only listen once the damage is visible? Jasmine hadn't given people answers. She gave them permission to ask. That mattered more than any headline. Melania never responded. She didn't have to. Her silence had already said enough. And Jasmine never tried to speak for her again, because she didn't need to. She had already made her point. And the country heard it.